What's going on, UFC fans? This is LTrain here. Today I'm going to be breaking down the lightweight division, kind of telling you my rankings. I'm going over matchups and stuff that's coming up in the future. Before I get started, I just want to let you know that I base my rankings off of a body of work that each fighter does in the UFC, and I always put the champ number one. So let me just go ahead and run down the list for you. Number 1, I got Frankie Edgar. 2, BJ Penn. 3, Kenny Florian. 4, Gray Maynard. 5, Sean Sherk. 6, Evan Dunham. 7, George Soparopoulos. 8, Tyson Griffin. 9, Jim Miller. And 10, Clay Guida. Frankie Edgar, most recent fight was against BJ Penn, where he won the lightweight title. He also, before that, he looked great against Sean Sherk. His only loss is to Gray Maynard a little while back, but it has looked like a different fighter since fighting Gray Maynard, in my opinion. He's got a 7-1 UFC record. BJ Penn, he's beat most of the top contenders in the lightweight division since returning to the division in 2007. He defeated Kenny Florian, and then threw a beat down on Diego Sanchez before losing to Frankie Edgar. He's got an 11-5-1 UFC record. Kenny Florian, only losses are in championship fights. He lost to Sean Sherk back at UFC 64 when they first brought back the lightweight division, and he lost to BJ Penn at UFC 101. Since losing to BJ Penn, he's had wins over Takanori Gomi and Clay Guida. His UFC record is 11-3. Gray Maynard is 7-0. He has wins over Jim Miller and Frankie Edgar. He revenged a loss to Nate Diaz that happened during the tough season. All 4 of these guys are going to be on the UFC 118 card, with Gray Maynard versus Kenny Florian and BJ Penn and Frankie Edgar too. So that's going to be a big night for the lightweight division. Number 5, we have Sean Sherk. He's 3-2 as a lightweight. He really hasn't been active as of late. He holds wins over Kenny Florian and Tyson Griffin. He's got a 7-4 UFC record. Evan Dunham is number 6. He's got an 11-0 MMA record. I'm really impressed with this kid. He had an armbar win over Efren Escudero, who was hyped up by a lot of people as somebody who was going to be climbing the ladder in the UFC lightweight division. He stopped him, and then he followed that up with a split decision victory over Tyson Griffin at UFC 115 last month. I just found this out that Sean Sherk and Evan Dunham will be fighting at UFC 119. So as we look at the top 6, all these guys are fighting each other. You know, Edgar versus Penn, Florian versus Maynard, and Sherk versus Dunham. I mean, this is going to really sort out this division, the top echelon of this division. Number 7, I have George Soparopoulos. I've been impressed with him as well. He had a victory over one-time title challenger Joe Stevenson, and then most recently, last weekend at UFC 116, he beat Batman Pellegrino. What was really impressive was Pellegrino had been looking really good coming into the fight. He was riding a 5-fight win streak. So he's 6-0, and that's tough for anybody to do, is to go 6-0 in the first 6 fights in the UFC. So I got him at 7. 8 at Tyson Griffin. His biggest win is against Clay Guida. Most of his wins are against mid-level fighters, like guys like Hermes Franca, Rafael Dos Santos, and Gleison Tebow. All of his losses have been the quality top rank lightweight fighters. He's 7-3 in the UFC, and he will be fighting coming up the UFC's next event versus Takanori Gomi. That's UFC 1 versus 2. Number 9 is Jim Miller. Jim Miller has been ranked in a lot of guys as top 10 lightweight rankings. I have him in number 9 in the UFC because he's mostly fought B-level fighters. His best wins are probably against Mark Boschek and Matt Wyman. And the only time he fought a contender was against Gray Maynard, and Gray Maynard handled him pretty easily. So I have him at number 9. His UFC record is 7-1. And rounding out the top 10, I got Clay Guida. You know, he's kind of like the opposite of Gray Maynard. Gray Maynard is not really that exciting a fighter to me. A lot of people as well, he's not that exciting of a fighter. And Clay Guida is like the exact opposite. He's a really, really exciting fighter. But he only has a so-so record in the UFC at 7-5. His biggest win is probably against Nate Diaz. Most of his losses, like Tyson Griffin, have been the top guys. So that's my top 10. I got a couple people I want to mention down further in the rankings. One of them is Melvin Goulart, and the other is Gleison Tebow. Both these guys have been kind of up and down in their UFC careers, but lately they've been up. Both of them have won 4 out of their last 5 fights. They both have 7-4 UFC records. Tebow's best wins are probably against Jeremy Stevenson and Terry Edom. Goulart's best wins are against Marcus Davis and Gleison Tebow. Let's see. Tebow is going to be fighting Jim Miller at UFC Fight Night 22. And Melvin Goulart is going to be fighting Jeremy Stevens at UFC 119. So George Soparopoulos and Evan Dunham has been climbing up the division ladder quickly. There's a couple other guys down at the bottom I think might have the potential to do so. One of them is Ross Pearson. He's 3-0 in the UFC. I mean, he's got great kicks, hard punches. He's got a good chin. I think if he works on his wrestling a little bit, he could definitely be at the upper echelon shortly. Most of you guys know him. He was on the Tough season, UK versus United States. His next fight is against Cole Miller at UFC Fight Night 22 coming up shortly. Another guy is Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos is he had a rough start coming into the UFC. He got a TKO loss to Jeremy Stevenson, and then he looked excellent against Tyson Griffin, but dropped the decision. He's on a 3-fight win streak, and his last fight was against Terry Edom, who himself has been looking pretty good. He's 3-2 in the UFC, as I said, and his next fight is going to be against Clay Guida at UFC 117. I'm really excited about this fight. This could be a fight that could really move him up the division if he can handle Clay Guida. So those are my top 10. Some of the guys I wanted to mention. Since we got a layoff here for a while before the next UFC, I'm going to be trying to break down all of the divisions. So stay tuned. Till next time, I'm LTrain.